Welcome to episode 17 of Cautious Coffee. My name's Austin Staton, joined alongside the co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, DeRae Crane. DeRae, it's been 2 weeks. We traveled. We had a Labor Day weekend. So we're, I don't know, maybe another mid-season break, which is maybe good for mental health with everything that's going on in the world right now. But how is everything going on your end? What's happening?
Absolutely incredible. And as you mentioned, we were on a little break, spending time with the friends, family, doing a little bit of traveling. You know how we love to do that stuff. I was up in Colorado hanging out with the son and my girlfriend, and I think you were somewhere out east. Looked like you were on a boat. Maybe, I don't know.
I wish I was on a boat. No, I was I was on a boat like a few months ago, but I was actually in Portland, Oregon. Went wine tasting with Katie, and we had a really, really good time. We went to Portland as well for a night and a half, and I can say that after visiting Portland, Oregon, I am very thankful that I live in Texas. So
really, okay. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Oregon is one of the 4 or 5 states I haven't been to. So
Oregon is a great state. If you do go, I would recommend that you definitely sightsee, go, up the coast, enjoy that. But maybe stay away from Portland. I don't know what's going on. It was very dirty. There was like a shooting a block away from the bar that we went to in like mid-daylight. So it was maybe not the best experience. So maybe we'll have to give Portland another shot, but no pun intended.
So I can't say that's what comes to mind when I think of Portland, Oregon, but I'll keep that in mind.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, right. So bad experience, but it's maybe worth giving another shot. It is a beautiful town, and with the rivers there. But enough about travel. It's been 2 weeks since we've podcasted, and we want to thank everyone for liking, subscribing, and continuing to engage with us on social media. And we just encourage you to continue to do so. If you're not following us already, just search Cautious Coffee on all the platforms, or of course you can visit our website at cautiouscoffee.com. And DeRae, what are we discussing this week for episode 17?
For episode 17, we're talking about politics, but we're going to dive into a little bit of a conversation about a Democratic lottery and the implications of it. And just see where that takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we could say we're maybe subject matter experts on this because we're Americans and we voted. And I do have a degree in political science and international relations. So although it's not my full-time job, I like to think that I at least have opinions on this. And I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. But
you and everyone on Facebook.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So we're recording this episode on Thursday, September 9th, and this afternoon it was announced that there was going to be a vaccine mandate by the U.S. government for employers, I guess, that had more than 100 employees. And if they weren't vaccinated, then the requirement is that they wear a mask at all times, or N95 mask. I don't have the exact ruling. There's not a game plan or a rollout put in place, but the first thought that I had was, let me go to Facebook and see what people are saying. I don't know why that's my mind, but it seems like on Facebook, everyone's a constitutional scholar.
So my first thought was, well, those companies that had 100 employees will have 99 tomorrow. that was my first thought.
Or maybe they split up their businesses into different groups, different segments. I don't know. Maybe that's a plan. I do think it's going to be interesting to follow and to see what happens. And of course, we discussed vaccine mandates on the podcast a few months back. And I think my take was the government should not mandate vaccines, that it should be up to the businesses to decide what they want to do. And my take was encourage the businesses to make that decision. And if they don't, that's fine. It's their choice. But I think you align in the thought process of freedom of choice.
Freedom.
Yeah. Freedom. America. But, all right. Politics, lottery. Talk about it.
So I listen to other podcasts, of course, and Malcolm Gladwell has a podcast out there, and he had someone on that was talking about a democratic lottery, and it wasn't anything that was done at scale. It was something done in, in a classroom. And, they had conversations with, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders, about running for student office. And, the question was asked, well, do you all like the process? And people were, kind of indifferent to it. So he asked the question again, but this time he had everyone write down kind of their answers. And what he saw was that people really weren't happy with it, mainly in just running for office. It's kind of, it's a pain in the ass, right. As opposed to, running an office is different. Like, these are two different things. So what he found was that people that were just able to enter their name into a lottery because they want to run for that office or hold that seat, there was just more participation, and all the other motivations or hidden agendas, like, they just went away, because you have no one coming to you asking for things so you can give them money to their campaign, and you can really just focus on what the goal is, and that's to run that office, effectively, competently, and without competing interests. And I really like that idea, because a lot of what seems to be going on in this country and in politics, or a lot of elected offices, is that people run for all the wrong reasons. And I thought the lottery would really just do away with that.
So that's a really interesting take. I don't know that I like the concept of a lottery. I think you're on the right track, but and don't get me wrong, I love Malcolm Gladwell. Like, one of my favorites to read. I can pick up any book of his and read it within 2 to 3 hours, because he writes in a way that is meant for audiobooks, which I think helps incredibly. But the lottery system, like, how would that work? I mean, could anyone that is of a certain age put their name in the ring and run for office? Is this something that's only done locally? I totally understand what you say about the political system and people not being in it for the right reasons, similar to being on The Bachelor. Some people aren't in it for the right reasons. They're just there for the social media clout, which I get. But campaign spending has been absolutely astronomical, which is a huge, huge problem. We even look here locally. I know somebody who ran for office for a county commissioner seat this past year. He didn't win, but in the primary alone, he spent nearly $1 million.
So why don't you like the lottery again? Because this solves that problem too.
So here's my thought. If you've got 1,000 people who put their name in the lottery,
yes,
like, what qualifications are you putting in place to make sure that those people are actually not conspiracy theorists or, not radicals? I mean, how does that work with checks and balances if everything is based on a lottery system? Like, how does that make sense?
What do we have now?
It's oftentimes whoever has the biggest campaign funds, but at least for the most part, I would say that these people are generally qualified, with a background in business or politics. So are you setting any sort of qualifications to allow people, they have to meet these certain benchmarks before they can enter that name into a lottery? So
I
just don't want,
for a thought experiment, let's just say we did that. Now you're concerned.
We could end up with Alex Jones as president. Is that a good thing?
I mean, they are American.
But is that best for America's place in the world? I mean, there was a lot of people, agree or disagree, that didn't like Trump, saying that he was an incredibly radical. Now, take that to the next level. Say that you have someone like Alex Jones or Alex Berenson, who was just banned from Twitter. They throw their hat in the ring and somehow get voted. Or are you thinking of maybe a different system in which you still keep the political parties in place, right? Or maybe have multiple parties, 3, 4, 5 parties. And those parties themselves nominate a candidate. And then from there, it's random.
I think the details can be worked out, but it can be done in a way to where term limits, like that problem, gets solved.
Oh gosh, we need term limits. I agree.
Campaign spending gets solved, right? Large corporations and special interest groups, they're taken out of the equation because you're not thinking about, well, I need money for my next campaign to get reelected. Like that's not even in your thought process, right?
Right.
Your whole focus, what is the goal of holding elected office, right? It's to serve competently and to address the concerns of your constituents.
Yeah, I agree. That's.
But you have
what
all
it
this
should be.
other noise. You have all this other noise in.
True.
That gets thrown into it, and then now we lost focus of the goal, and now we're not even doing what we're supposed to be doing here in this elected office. So
I agree with you that
wash.
you have so many messed up issues in our country, right? Campaign finance reform needs to happen. Corporations, lobbying groups, buying seats at the local level, because that's literally what happens. There are some, take the energy sector, for example. There are some places in the United States in which there are refineries that exist in states that maybe aren't pro-energy. But those refineries support thousands of jobs in that area. But you have lobbyists and special interest groups that are trying to fill seats on the local city council and paying insane amounts of money for ads, getting people out to vote to place a candidate that is going to serve their interests. And it could be the best interests of that country or that region long-term to maybe divest from energy. But there's other consequences that are in place. Yeah. And it seems like the more money that you have, the more influence you have. And I think that's true with society and capitalism as a whole. But again, my concern is the qualification process. And I think there might be a better solution, perhaps. I like the idea because I think we're on the right track.
What do you got?
Yeah, I do think we're on the right track and thinking of problems and thinking that the system right now is broken. There's two possible solutions that I like.
Okay.
The first one is ranked choice voting. I think that is something that can be incredibly powerful. So to give a little bit of an example, in high school, I was in debate and had to do extemporaneous speaking. And I was in a tournament my junior year. I was in the finals. There were 3 judges, 8 finalists, and I did not get 1 first place ballot, but I got 3 second place ballots. And because of how the judges interpreted the other speakers, if you go by ranked choice, I had the best score or the lowest score. And so therefore I was crowned champion, first place overall, even though I didn't have a first place vote. So if you take that to a larger scale, and we've actually seen some states, some counties, some cities do this. I believe Nebraska did this for the Electoral College, or maybe it was Delaware. I think it was a state with 3 electoral votes this past year, did ranked choice voting. And it was based on a percentage is how they separated the electoral votes. And so I think if you do something like that, it could maybe incentivize these smaller parties that don't have as much resources or financial backing to still have a horse in the race. Or perhaps you do a system like Germany, the coalition governments, where you've got multiple political parties, and in order to get the most coalition, or in order to gain power, you have to work with other parties, right? You have to form a coalition, and then from there, the party determines who the chancellor is going to be. So I like those systems a little bit better. And I totally get your point about campaign finance and business involvement, lobbying groups, because that's a huge issue. Because you feel that oftentimes people might go into politics with the right intention, that they want to help and serve their constituents, but money talks.
I think you're hung up on the
qualifications.
I think you're hung up on the qualifications.
I am.
Because there are plenty of elected officials right now that aren't necessarily qualified to hold the office. So that weakens your
100%.
Argument. There are plenty of
100%.
people that are especially qualified to run an elected office. They don't run because it's ridiculous, and they're rational human beings. And they say, you know what? I'm not going to go through the trouble of running. And there are plenty of people that run for office and they're terrible people, but they have
100%.
They have deep pockets and they're painted in a light that says they're amazing people. And then you'll have people that are awesome, and then they get painted in a light that they're terrible people. So this just takes it and makes it random. If you're qualified to run, we can figure out what those qualifications are, right? But it's not like you're going to have people going to the ends of the earth to have this. Like you reach a benchmark, you're qualified. You're in there. You put your name in the hat. If you're twice as qualified as another candidate, it's not going to increase your chances of winning. And I think it totally just levels the playing field. You have all these people that are competent, capable of running that office, because the experiment that Malcolm did was he just realized that 3/4 of the people that ran wouldn't have run if it weren't random. So
you do have a very good point.
So I'm just looking at some of the issues that we have with the current system, and how can you end up with this continuity of power, I suppose, and it just keeps trickling down. And if you have a lottery, well, it's random, man. You're coming in to do your public servant thing, for a term, and then maybe you get it reelected.
But it's random.
Yep, highly likely you won't get reelected. And then you keep it moving. You move on with your life. You're not a lifetime politician.
Yeah, I think lifetime politicians is a huge issue. And you mentioned people that aren't qualified. I mean, you look at someone like Madison Cawthorn, who's 26 years old when he was elected. And some might say that some of his, conspiracy theorist comments are, and his anger management and overall gravitas maybe aren't what a congressional member should be.
Yeah. It's a wash, man.
Yeah. So again, I've been really skeptical of this whole thought. And so while you've been talking, I've been trying to go to Google and see if there's like anything that's out there.
Yeah.
And I found an op-ed in the New Jersey Star Ledger from Alexander Guerrero. And it's not just some random person. He's a professor of philosophy at Rutgers University in the School of Arts and Sciences, and he had a book that argues that we should use lotteries rather than elections to select our political leaders. And again, I was a little confused by it because I'm still skeptical on this, but
it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to think.
Seek discomfort, right? But here is what he says. Here's his contention. We should instead have randomly chosen citizens selected to serve on single issue legislators, each covering specific areas such as immigration, transportation, education, agricultural, and so on. There would be no elected president. Don't know that I agree with that because you have to have somebody to represent your country in foreign matters. Yeah. The executive functions would be covered partly by single issue legislative bodies, partly by executive agencies made up of officials who are appointed and screened by randomly chosen citizens. The Supreme Court would continue to protect individual constitutional rights. Much more could be said, and I say more elsewhere, but let's focus on the details of the legislative system. And so he goes on and on to talk about how this civil lottery, where all adult citizens would be eligible and chosen at random to serve. So in a sense, to me, this seems like jury duty on a larger scale.
I think there are just people that are really, they want to serve, man, as opposed to just the people that just want to get elected. And I think the election changes people too, right? I read in Barack Obama's book, I mean, what you have to go through to get elected. Oh my goodness.
Oh gosh.
Right.
He spent a ton of money too.
Even that, just the personal toll it takes on your family, and where it puts you mentally. We talk about mental health in this country, and it's not something we can necessarily ignore. I just think it resolves, obviously you solve one problem, you create another one. I got it.
Right.
But how can we, why not entertain something that's different? Right. And I know a lottery seems ridiculous a little bit, but quite honestly, the world is random as AF. And we as humans really just don't like that. That makes us uncomfortable when stuff is so random. We got to have it in this nice, neat box with a bow on top. So I can see, how people would be opposed to it. Absolutely. But realistically, and like in reality, as we live, just life is random. Things that happen in your life are random. Sorry, guys. Actually, I'm not sorry, guys.
All right. I was 100% against this when he started speaking. Now I kind of see some, validity behind it. I would like to maybe see this tested at a local level.
Me too.
Maybe with like a city council first.
Yeah.
See how it works. But I've been a firm advocate that in order to vote, you should be engaged in the political process in some form or way. Mm. And I think this checks that box where people that want to engage in the political system are empowered to do so.
Yep.
I mean,
it takes down all the barriers.
We've done lotteries before.
Takes down all the barriers.
I mean, we've done lotteries before. Mm-hmm. I mean, the draft essentially is a lottery.
But they didn't sign up for that lottery, though. There's the difference.
That's
this is
true.
A voluntary lottery.
Yeah. So the more and more that I think about it, I think my biggest concerns were empowering someone like an Alex Jones who could, by random, get power. But after reading that op-ed from Professor Guerrero, I think it's maybe not as radical of an idea as it sounds.
It isn't. It really is
interesting.
It's it needs to be cleaned up, obviously. But I think, like you were saying, it's empowering. If you think about all the barriers, and when I was having this conversation with a friend, and I was saying rational people don't run for office.
No, I mean, you're a rational person, and I know there's several people who have tried to convince you to run for office, and maybe it'll happen at some point. But
it's like,
I see you as the person that doesn't want to get into that messy game of not wanting to spend millions of dollars in maybe what could be perceived as a wasteful manner. Mm-hmm. And what's the ROI? You have more power?
It's power.
We're power hungry.
There you go. So you have all these people with these God complexes. They think they can save the world. They get into that game, and it is messy as heck. And everything that they have to do, right? You want to run and be a senator where you're going to spend half your time on the phone fundraising. Okay, half your time. How are you addressing the issues of your constituents? You got this quota. You got to make this many calls.
Yeah.
Right? It's madness. So let's take all that away. Let's let them focus 100% of their time, energy, and effort on the issues. All right, let's actually give them time to read the bills that they're signing into law. That's all.
So do you want to guess?
That's all I'm interested in doing with this.
That's totally fair.
Radical idea.
Do you want to guess how much money was spent by Hillary Clinton in the 2016 campaign in which she lost?
Yeah, and where is she now? Right. So,
do you want to guess how much?
Let me guess. $250 million.
Put this in perspective to give you maybe another hint. Donald Trump, according to Bloomberg, spent $646.8 million. That was as of December 2016. What was Hillary's figure?
750 million?
Nearly double.
Wow.
$1.19 billion.
Billion.
$1.19 billion.
That's one election.
How could that have, for one election that she lost? I question whether or not she had the right strategist in place, or if she was just a bad candidate, or what. But how else could that have been spent?
That's a good question.
Education reform.
That's a good question. I think it's just more, how many campaigns are there in this country? How much money is spent in total? What are the issues with the system as it's in place now? there are obviously more people, more qualified, more well-adjusted, more rational, more pragmatic, more objective to hold these offices.
Yeah.
But
have you ever served on a grand jury?
I've not. I've never had even jury duty. So that comparison also isn't, because right, you don't volunteer for jury duty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't. Tell me more. What about it?
So I had a friend that was on a grand jury, and I think it's like depending on where you're at, it's like a few month commitment. And so basically you see, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but you see like evidence from both sides to decide whether somebody who has been charged with a crime, whether that moves forward to an actual judge or jury. And so it's kind of like that pre-hearing, if that makes sense. But the person that I know that was on this afterwards was very transparent about it and said that that was one of the coolest things they've ever done. And they had been able to see an assortment of cases, some that were probably incredibly difficult to see and hear. But they felt more empowered and more part of the judiciary process than, likely they'll ever be. And I thought that was a really interesting take. And they said it was a great time, from a civics perspective, a civic duty perspective.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't know, just
getting to see behind the curtain, right? There's like I said, all those barriers, getting people involved in civics. I just think it's a cool way. Not necessarily even radical. It just makes sense if we're thinking about all the waste, fraud and abuse, all the lies, right? Every time a politician gets up, I can't say every time, many times politicians get up, at a podium and they speak. Well, they're double speaking because they have commitments to other people, and they can't just be straight shooters, right? And, that lottery just allows you to just tell it, just shoot straight, because hey, you're probably not gonna get reelected, right? So it's like, well, let me do the best job that I can, and like I said, this hasn't been like fully thought out. It's just a thought experiment right now. But
I like it.
It's almost. I'm just saying, like, it's a wash. It's a wash because even the people that we think are qualified, turn out not to be necessarily.
And vice versa. People that we don't think are qualified turn out to be incredibly qualified.
That's the point, Austin.
Yeah. I will say this, DeRae.
The point.
When you texted me this idea of political lottery, I think I misinterpreted it.
Okay.
I was thinking more we were going to have a conversation on ranked choice voting. And when we started discussing this about 3 to 4 minutes into this episode, I was like, how are we going to do 10 minutes? How is this going to happen? Like, how am I going to have this conversation? But here we are, 28 minutes and 49 seconds into this podcast. And I thought it was an enlightening conversation. And we're not advocating for, this policy has to be in place so we have all the answers. But it's a thoughtful discussion on addressing some of the problems that we have in this country and locally, and how we can maybe create a system that works better for everyone.
There we go.
Gives people equality of opportunity.
Drop mic right there. Works better for everyone. Because
that's what we want.
Instead of a small majority, like everybody, we need more AOCs out here. I know people may have opinions about her, but she's cool. Some of the things that she says, I obviously don't agree everything that she says, but just her energy and how she comes at
passionate. You. Yeah, I just hope she keeps that passion and doesn't become someone like a Nancy Pelosi. Whether you agree with her or not, I think she's great. Yeah, because she shows people that anyone can do it.
Yep, just energy,
regardless of your background or age, you can do it. And yeah, I think it's a cool story. And it'll be interesting to see where her career goes from there. But DeRae, we're coming up on 30 minutes. I thought it was a fun episode, and we definitely want to hear from you guys. Are we just out of our minds thinking of this lottery system? Do you agree with DeRae that it should be all random, or do you fear, like me, that someone like Alex Jones could be put into office and really set this country back significantly. If you want to leave feedback, DeRae, where should our listeners do that?
Go to our website, buy a coffee mug and a T-shirt for Halloween and all that good stuff. Dress up as either Austin or DeRae for Halloween. LinkedIn, Facebook. I think we're on TikTok. We're still on TikTok. I go back and forth about whether I want to be on TikTok or not.
I love it. And it's also pumpkin spice latte season, so you need a coffee mug. I think I've got a coffee mug. You can't see it, but it's over my shoulder right there. And all of that information is on our website and social media channels. And of course, I want to thank everyone that supports us on Patreon. We couldn't do the show without you guys, but we will be back next week on another topic that I think is going to be an interesting conversation. Do you want to give any previews for that, DeRae, or
we try to have
tell people to turn in next week?
We try to have interesting conversations. I'm just going to leave it with, I believe all drugs should be legal. Thank you all for listening to Cautious Coffee, and we'll be back next week.
That's a hell of a teaser. We'll see you next week, everyone. Take care.